Hey, what's up, everybody? BDO44 coming at you with another video. All right, so what are we talking about? Right now, we're talking about some of the NBA stuff that I haven't had a chance to really talk about, and how it relates to something we've been talking about as of late, which is inflated scoring. And, well, quite honestly, we're seeing it all over the place right now. And it's very entertaining. I attempted to watch the Donovan Mitchell highlights, man, when he went for 71. 11 assists, 9 rebounds, something ridiculous. Just some James Harden, Kobe Bryant type numbers. He really stepped into a different level. And I've been on record not being as respectful of Donovan Mitchell's game because of the fit that I thought the Knicks were trying to put together. It made it so that I was speaking in a way that didn't reflect what it was that he just did. So I have to elevate him in my mind and give him much more respect than I've given him on this camera. So I'm doing that right now. But what also needs to be said is I've seen him get to the line at a crazy rate already this season. So I'm not surprised he went to the line 20-something times in that game. I saw that Klay Thompson went for 53, I think, or 54 in the same night. It was crazy how that was going on. You look at Bron's numbers, he's up in the 40s. Look at Giannis tonight. He got his career high 55. This is wrong. I've been telling you guys that my issue with what the NBA is doing right now is I think because they've been trying to recreate the Steph Curry-like numbers when he goes crazy shooting the ball like a madman. And trying to recreate some of the numbers that Kobe put up, of course, scoring the ball. That fast-paced Phoenix Suns team back from the early 2000s. It's just certain ways that the NBA knows that they can garner a lot of attention, and that one of the main ways is to put up a lot of scoring. They didn't like how the NBA felt back in the early 90s. Well, not early 90s, I'd have to say. I guess the 90s. Any of them times where you would have them games where they would go 79 to 84, and you'd have games where it would just be hard to watch. So what they're trying to eliminate is those games. I think they're trying to bring those games to a minimum because they think that this era wouldn't be able to digest that product based on the fact that they've been conditioned for such a high volume scoring type of game. But my thing is, I respect that is a real thing, but I think you're ruining the sport by tweaking it in such a way that allows for guys who are in this era to have inflated numbers that are, while we're in this era, falsely comparing them to the guys who had much more difficult time scoring the ball and accomplished great scoring efforts in those environments. So when I look at what Donovan Mitchell did today, and I look at some of the other stuff that I've seen over the last couple of weeks, I just say this is a product of what it is we've been talking about in regards to that. We had mentioned that many times on this camera leading up to some of these numbers that we're seeing. Just 2 weeks ago, we were talking about how we didn't like what we were seeing in regards to the Lakers because some of them games look like, some of that stuff looked compromised to me. And I was like, you know what? Honestly, as much as I enjoy watching guys break records, I have to discount and discredit what it is that they're doing to a degree in comparison to those guys because of the rule changes and the presence of certain things that just look compromised to me, etc. And then here we are seeing even more unprecedented numbers than what it was when I was saying that. I hadn't even, I didn't have in my mind when I was saying that somebody was about to go out and score 71 points and get 11 assists. Like, that is stupid. That's just stupid, man. And you got to give him credit for what it is he accomplished, but you also have to understand he's coerced and helped into that by the way the game is being officiated today, and by the way the rules are set up. It just allows for more scoring, and it doesn't allow the defense really any room for consistency. I was listening to something that D'Angelo Russell said at the end of his game against the Pelicans, and he was sitting there saying Zion plays football out there, and nobody's allowed to touch him. And I haven't watched enough Pelicans games to know if that holds any weight, but just zooming out overall, it holds all the weight in the world because it's exactly what we are saying. Just in general, you can't touch these dudes, but they can truck past you. Something was brought to my attention, obviously as a non-basketball player. I'm constantly picking up things that are second nature to guys who really ran the floor, and I respect that. But one of the things that was articulated that I was able to pick up sometime last year while I was continuing this process of studying was how to absorb the understanding that offensive players dish out punishment. And of course, I know that. When you see a guy like Karl Malone, you grew up watching Karl Malone stick his knee out, or you watch your own guy, Shaq, give an elbow to a guy's throat and get called, and no foul's called. The guy who gets hit in the throat gets called for the foul. So you know offensive players dish out punishment. But I'm talking about players like Paolo Banchero, Giannis Antetokounmpo, LeBron James. When you're just dealing with them, not necessarily when they're intending to send you into a space of pain, but just in guarding them in general and bumping off of them as they turn into you and put their elbows into your side and things of that nature, as they bump off of you just in doing regular moves, that's punishment coming your way. And while you don't look at it as the equivalent of a foul, because obviously you're initiating contact yourself by trying to guard that player, at the end of the day, a lot of the offensive fouls that are taking place out there just aren't articulated in the rules as offensive foul. And that's something that they can control by way of the adjustments to these rules that they're making. My biggest problem with the rules today is just how they interpret traveling. And I think it's completely and utterly backwards. I think we're allowing people to travel constantly all around the perimeter, but then don't misevaluate the movement of a pivot foot. When I was growing up, your pivot foot could move, it just couldn't lift. Now they're essentially saying if your pivot foot isn't steadfast in one pointed direction, if you're pivoting and that foot happens to twist or turn in a natural motion, they're calling it as a travel. Like, bro, you can't tell me that's a travel when I'm watching guys take 3 and 4 steps back after picking up their dribble and then proceed to shoot jump shots. Like, no, you can't tell me that's a travel when I'm watching something called the Euro step that just came into the league over the last 15 years that I know damn well is a travel. It's been a travel. It's a carry and a travel. So it's like, if you're going to switch the rules up to allow for these things, then put an asterisk next to these guys' names when they do this. You know what I mean? Because that's not the environment that Mike was in. That ain't the environment that Kareem was in. That's not the environment that Magic was in, etc. They had to deal with real rules, real defense, real hand checking, and actual punishment that would now be called for technicals and all kinds of stuff that would immediately allow for them to have inflated numbers if they were to play in this era. How many assists a guy like Magic Johnson would be able to average if he played on a team with LeBron James or something like that in this era? How many? He would average like 15 assists, 20 assists. Like, it's not fair to ever compare these guys' inflated numbers to them boys that was fighting the way that they were fighting, the way the game was officiated back in the day. You need to revert those rules back to a more standard way so that history can be kinder to the players involved right now. And they don't care to do that because they're too damn greedy. They're too damn stuck on the fact that we're not going to enjoy a burnt out product where the score isn't very high. And I'm telling you that they're basically stumping the evolution of the game in a way by way of them standing in the way of the way the game has always been played and people being able to evolve through that. They are adjusting the rules so that the adjustments that have already been made don't necessarily have to stand anymore. Some of the different skills that were picked up and the different things that people were learning as they were continuing to evolve through the rules as they were. Now it's like, nah, we're gonna stretch that out to make it so much easier for you, but we're also gonna lock you up in some other areas that you were used to being able to move. So now it's like some of the players who were able to have advantages don't have the advantage anymore. And now they've dumbed it down, so to speak, for other types of players. And we know what we're talking about here. The athletes, the real jumpy, bouncy athletes, the game is made for them to now have to slow down so that other guys who can shoot a little better, but maybe don't move as fast, can keep up with them so that they can have that score be high with those great shooters. Because if dunkers are out there jumping all over the place and bricking shots left and right, which is what the stereotype probably is, then it's likely that they're going to not keep the scores high. So that's just my little theory. It don't have to hold as much weight as you know, at all. But that's just what I think is going on. They're trying to phase a certain type of player out of the game and try to involve a more international flavor. And as long as you got these dudes that are just able to break your ankles and take you off the dribble left and right and continue to blow past you without any concern, if they don't do away with the ability to cross you up and do all this other stuff, uh, a lot of the players that they really want to see succeed in this league are just going to be obsolete based on the fact they can't dance and they can't keep up with people who can. So they remove, they put in carrying rules, which is really just stopping you from being able to actually, dribble your way around certain situations. They make it difficult for guys like Kyrie, who would basically average 50 if they would have just, not messed with the rules in such a way. You know what I mean? They would allow for him to do a little more carrying, do a little more of what it is that he do, keep his pivot foot, and not have that weird situation where they call in travels. I think the game would be more catered for guys like him, because he's left and right, darting up and down, creating space with his ability to just basically like confuse you. Guys like James Harden put you in a blender, it's a wrap. You're not going to be able to do anything with him if they don't implement these rules that stop the carrying and all of that. So I want them to put the rules back the way they were, not necessarily to allow everybody back in who was in there, but so that the comparison data can make some sense, so that we can look at guys and say, yeah, he's actually as good as, whoever from the back of the day, Oscar Robertson or whatever. Because right now, I think they're doing these guys no service. They're doing them a disservice by having them run around with these soft rules and these inflated scores. And a guy like Donovan Mitchell, 71 points, actually average out to like maybe 60 points if you revert the rules back. Still an amazing game, but it's not this. And I'm like, man, I don't want to look at it as them stirring the pot, but I'm wired to look at it that way. I'm just wired at this point to look at things from a you're trying to get me riled up perspective. You're trying to get me to pull the race card type of perspective. I actually honestly look at things that way at this point, because I just think there's so much of that going on to where people know people are going to get riled up if they do certain things, so they do certain things to get the people riled up. And I don't know that this doesn't have an aspect of that in it to go along with every other factors that this might affect. But, that's the going conversation. Because as you look around in the forums, it's like, okay, you hear that Donovan Mitchell's, game was 71 points, but then you saw what they did afterwards. They drug test him the very next day. And of course, the natural thing that most people are going to say is, well, did you test Luka? That's a natural thing. And then you're going to have people come back and say, you're racist for doing that. And I'm like, this is scripted. This is an obvious reaction to what it is that happens when people do stuff like what the NBA is doing there. This black dude didn't score 71-something points, and you're going to test him the next day? All that's doing is make people say, I got a race card to pull, or they're about to pull the race card. Like, that's all that does. If you really want to know, that's all that does. It gets people in a space where they get defensive and start being aggressive about their position. And it's ugly. It's ugly, and I think it's purposeful. I really do. And so that's just what I'm looking at, man. I don't know, but I don't like it. At the end of the day, I'm not mad at Donovan Mitchell for being drug tested necessarily, and I don't know that Luka wasn't drug tested, but I know they made sure to let us know that Donovan was drug tested, and they made sure to not let us know if Luka was drug tested. And I think that that's a thing, man. I just don't like the idea of anything that would just stir the pot with so much sensitivity going on and so much confusion. But as far as the skill set of the players and all of that, guys will adjust to the new rules. Obviously they're benefiting from it in terms of the numbers, and of course there's a lot of ramifications other than just a good product that comes with having good high numbers. Guys can meet contractual obligations. It makes more money for them in the long run if they meet certain benchmarks and stuff like that. So this is good for the players in the meantime. But I'm just a firm believer that when the money's made and the money's spent, and you're still looking at the numbers and you're looking at the data, that's really going to matter more so to the overall than what it is that you're focused on in the short term. And sometimes people get so short-sighted that they ruin the bigger picture, that they destroy what it is that they're doing because they're so short-sighted. And I think that we are in a situation in this era where it seems like everybody's holding a magnifying glass to whatever the hell they're doing. You know what I mean? And it just seems like it's too much zoom in going on right now. It's too much zoom in, and they're holding that magnifying glass in the sun, and it's burning something. You ever seen that happen before? We used to do that when I was a little kid. Just hold the magnifying glass right next to the sun, and whatever it points on, it's going to burn. And so it's one of those situations where that's what I think the NBA is kind of doing. They're not thinking about how this affects the credibility of the players as a whole. When you look at who can be compared to whom, and how they want to prop them up as top 75 and all these different things that they really, really take pride in, MVP awards and all this other stuff. It's like that stuff doesn't hold as much credibility when you have pockets in your history where you sold completely out. That's been my story. That was the same thing I was saying 2 weeks ago when we were talking about this, and I feel just as strongly now that I've seen 71 points, 55 points, 47 points, 55 points. Come on. 150 points. The Thunder scored 150 points tonight on the Celtics. Like, what are we talking about? That's not manipulated? Are you sure? The Thunder's a tanking team, and they didn't even have SGA tonight, from what I understand. He wasn't even on the floor. You know, you had people like Isaiah Joe scoring 25 points on the Boston Celtics. I'm like, I didn't need to see the highlights to know that that's some weird stuff going on there. I don't need to see the highlights to know that something went completely and utterly backwards right there. It's backwards, man. Ain't no way around it. And I'm willing to bet it's somewhere nestled in the ways that the rules are set up today and the way the officials called the games. And somewhere in between guys shooting the ball very well. And somewhere in between guys being called for a whole lot of fouls they probably shouldn't have been called for. It's just how it's going every night now. It's how it's going every night. And so as I've been saying, I only have more evidence. This thing is compromised right now, and it's never been more clear to me that it looks that way. If that's the best way to articulate, I'm not confused by what I'm saying. These people are fudging the numbers. They're inflating these superstars right now, and they're hurting them in the long run because the numbers are going to look bad. They're going to have an asterisk on their name. Their grandkids are going to be looking at them like, yeah, that era, they was all about the money. They wasn't really serious. So what we're going to do is just put them aside like the PED era in baseball and just continue on after we fix the rules and after everything got back together. Because the NBA should get back together at some point and get their rules back together. Desire to see hand checking and a little more physicality at some point. I'd imagine it's going to fluctuate. And when it does, you'll be able to see those players much more able to be compared to the guys that came before the guys who are here right now. And I think a lot of guys right now, they're just going to be, like I said, asterisks. You're going to see for a fact where the data's like, yeah, but they were not getting called for this, and this. And they found that this, and this was going on. And of course, we had sports betting at the time. That's how this era's going to look. Because I'm telling you right now, sports betting compromises the entire thing. It really does. It compromises it so much. And I know people making a lot of money. They're having a lot of fun. I'm sure you are. But the crap is compromised because of it. That's my theory on the situation. So, I mean, I would love to be able to have more of an exciting idea about all of what it is that I'm seeing. Great athletes are doing amazing things, but I just know it's inflated. I know it's inflated. It's not even a question. So, that's pretty much what I got, man. That is what I got. My interest in the NBA is zeroed in slowly on my team this year because of all of this. I'm not interested in no other teams. I'm only doing homework on the teams that we're playing. I just don't care. Like, they've taken my desire to focus on the league as a whole away from me. I love my team, and I will study our ops. That's pretty much it. Because it's like, this is not real. I'm not looking at real basketball. I'm looking at manufactured, manipulated for what it is that we want. Basketball. Business of basketball, and that's not real, man. You might as well just turn yourself into the WWE and paint the ball pink and just, that's it. Throw footballs at the rim, as I always say. Do that. Turn it into something else, man. Put them on tricycles. You know what I'm saying? Because this is some bull crap. It's not the league I grew up watching. And I don't mind seeing things change, but not for the worst. My name is BDL44. I thank you all for watching.